Okay, thank you very much for the invitation, Vladimir, and it's a pleasure to kind of be in Ukraine today. Yes, I came to this conference through friends of friends who recommended that I join you, and then I looked at the topic you'll discover, well, the wide range of topics. I thought, yes, I can see why education would fit very neatly into this this event. What I've done is I put some slides together to share some ideas. So I'll share my screen, and you haven't got to look at me in my front room. I will just sort this out. It's all in Russian, but I'm managing. Here we go. Do we have the slides?
Would it be so kind to start? Oh, okay, nice.
Right, so if I start with that, it's
That's
good.
it.
You have the slides, yeah? I'll
Nice.
put this down here. So, okay, let's get going. Learning to be sustainable in numbers. I've chosen a few numbers to structure this talk. 2 and 12, I think, may be new to many here, everybody here. I'm going to focus on those two, particularly because they are something which you will not be so familiar with, and they are tools which I've used and which others are using very much in Europe, and I'd like to discuss those in some detail. 17, 9 billion and 1, I think, are more familiar, but we'll see how we get on with those. Just to begin with then, as you've said, Vladimir, I've been billed as the academic expert to UNECE, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and I've worked with them since about 2002. In fact, was in Ukraine in 2003 for the Environment for Europe conference. I was a member of the UK delegation then, but my role within UNECE was as the NGO representative. So I'm not a part of the United Nations structure or anything like that. I come in as an outsider, and now I'm working at the University of Gloucestershire in the UK, where I'm from. But I continue a relationship with UNECE. They've actually asked me back a number of times on their expert groups. So that's why I'm billed as them. And in fact, just the last 2 days have been spent at a virtual conference in Baku in Azerbaijan, talking about some of these issues about education in vocational and higher education, with sustainable development, the need to integrate that. So I have a close association with UNECE, but this photograph here is where I go to work. The next slide is just a few. This is the commercial bit, the advertising for the university. We have lots of medals, prizes, awards. The People and Planet thing there ranks universities for being the most sustainable to the least sustainable in the UK. This year we are the most sustainable, and we've always been in the top 5. So it feels a comfortable home to be talking about sustainability. The Green Gown Awards, I'll talk about them in a minute. In terms of my own background, I've been working in environmental education for many, many years, more than I care to remember, since the 80s. And working with a colleague, Professor Bill Scott, we've produced 2 books quite recently. One is a sort of a reader, The World Will Leave Behind, very short chapters on a whole range of sustainability issues and strategies and concerns. And that's quite a handy book for my students anyway. And then we did something more reflective on the world we're in, and learning and education, environmental education and sustainable development education. We wanted to sort of pay a tribute in a way to all the different influences on us on this field that we've been dedicated our lives to. And so that's that second book, Learning, Environment and Sustainable Development, A History of Ideas. So those 2 are available. I think they're overpriced, so please ask a library for a copy. I'm going to dare to put the speaking up just in case so I can hear, in case anybody has an issue. So I'm starting with this number there, number 2. And for number 2, I'd like to start with some statements, which I'd like you to sort out. The statements are these, about it being best to identify a clear list of topics to be covered. Otherwise, sustainable development gets lost in the curriculum. 2, that it should be concerned with environmental issues, transport, waste, that sort of thing. Number 3, education for sustainable development in schools is about decision making, and it should ensure that learners are clear about what to do, what's the right thing to do. Education should involve activities with clear, measurable outcomes. Number 5, it should cover issues well beyond the school curriculum about the way it's managed. Number 6, education for sustainable development, or ESD, let's call it. It's getting children to explore issues and helping them find out for themselves. It's about the approach to education rather than curriculum content. Number 7 is saying ESD is about decision making and it should inform attitudes and opinions. Number 8, that there are no clear-cut solutions, and this is the kind of thing we should explore. And number 9, ESD is a type of political education. What I'd like to do is we're going to split you into groups, and we're going to ask you to sort out these statements and put them in an order. And the order is what we call diamond ranking. So read the statements with your colleagues. Try and agree on the preferred statement, A. Then your favoured statements, B and C. Then the statements which you think are in the middle, you're ambivalent about these. Less preferred statements, and then the least favoured statement. So we actually have a diamond ranking. It's like a shape of a diamond with your best statement. The one you all agree on is the most important. You all think is the truest statement is A, and the one you think is the one that you are probably less happy with, you put down the bottom, and everything else is ordered in the middle. We may not have time. I'm not going to give you time to sort out that in great detail, because I don't have you for I haven't asked for a long workshop, but I would like to just to give you a chance to at least meet 1 or 2 other people who are on the conference, and quickly go through those statements and see what you think of them. So Vladimir, if you could put everybody into randomly assigned groups of 3, we'll give you should we say 10 minutes? I hope everybody's back in the room now, and we'll I think I've stopped sharing my screen by the look of it. Yep, good, thank you. Yeah. Hang on. There we go. I'll keep people visible a bit. So, right, I'm still hearing myself, but at least you don't hear the echo. I'd just be interested to know which statements did people put as the most favoured? Anybody want to call out a number? Someone be brave and tell me what number statement.
Should we say or put in chart?
Well, actually, yes, put it in chat. I'm going to try and find the chat myself.
Oh.
I'll do is I'll try and find the chat. There it is. Okay, I can see the chat now, and I'm going to reshare my slide. I think my slide should be still visible. So 5, 3, 5, most popular straight away. 3, education is about decision making that should ensure learners are clear about the right things to do. The number 6 is education for sustainable development, getting children to explore and find things out for themselves rather than curricular content. And 1. Right, and okay, thank you for that. Can we now put the numbers down for the thing you rejected? What was number the bottom of the diamond? Let's pop some numbers in there. 9. Right. 99999. So people don't want to get political. And number one, thank you for that. Right, that's interesting. I need to share. Oh, I'm not sure what people can see now. Can you see me lining the statements up in columns?
Yes.
Yes, great. You got what I need you to have. It says, do you notice anything? If you read across now, 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 3 and 7, 4 and 8.
Yeah, diametrical. So if we are talking about one that's only one focus, and then for instance, let's take 2 and 6. So if 2 is only environmental issues, so the number 6 is a broader one, let's say.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that number 1 saying there should be a subject, number 5 is saying it should be everywhere, and as you say, number 2 is saying that it's environmental and specific issues, and number 6 a wider exploration, number 3 decision making and the right thing to do, whereas number 7 it's about you making your own decisions and developing your own attitudes and opinions about on which you base your decisions. Number 4, clearly measurable outcomes. Number 8, things are not clear cut. There are dilemmas. Number 9, it's saying that education is political. Well, if sustainable development is not political, what is it? It's not, and I accept that people reject this card mostly because it has the word political. It suggests party politics and national politics, but actually engagement with society, citizenship is absolutely crucial to sustainable development and developing a sustainable society. So of course it's a political act. So we need to handle that term political carefully. Personally, I put it at the top of my diamond, but that's because we need a discussion around that word political. And I use these cards with student teachers. They always reject number 9. And I try to get them to work it up to their diamond because I do see this as a citizenship issue. But that's how that works. And what I hope people have got, oh yes, Pauline's got sound. What I'm building up here is, and what's interesting about the way you rejected and accepted different numbers, you were mixing up those 2 columns. You weren't saying it's all one sort of education or the other. And this is what I would call ESD1 and ESD2. And if you're familiar with the ESD literature, you may well have come across this before. But ESD1 is promoting, facilitating changes in what we do, promoting informed and skilled behaviours. It's ways of thinking about what we need to do when the need is clearly identified and agreed. It is telling people what to do because it's pretty obvious what you need to do. As we know, in a time of the pandemic, we need to keep our distance. We need to wash our hands. We need to cover our faces. We need to do these things virtually. This is what we do to avoid the spread of a disease. We know about immunization. We know we should insulate our houses against heat loss. They're self-evident. I would say this is learning for sustainable development. On the other hand, ESD2 is about building our capacity to think critically and then beyond what experts say and to test ideas. There are many contradictions. Within those sustainable development goals, there are contradictions, and we need to discuss those and explore them, make up our own minds about things. We're actually learning our way forward because there are no clear-cut answers. If the answers were clear-cut, we would have solved all these problems many years ago. This is learning as sustainable development. sustainable development is a learning process. But what I'm not saying is that ESD1 is better than ESD2 or ESD2 is better than ESD1. What's essential is they are two sides of the same whole. So in the paper on this, which we wrote in 2007, we use the yin-yang symbol to show that the seed of one is in the other, that too much of one could flip over into the other, and in fact they are indivisible. But if we don't separate these out and recognize both sides, we tend to focus on one side or the other. I wrote this idea after well, we failed to get some money for a grant because the two of us who were going for it together were talking about two different things. I was talking about an exploratory sort of open education, children making up their own minds. My colleague was talking about a clear set of rules and ideas that people need to learn to be sustainable. And after that, I thought, no, we are both talking about what we call education for sustainable development, but we're talking about different things and we need to sort this out. You will find in frameworks like UNESCO's work, and they tend to focus ESD1. ESD2 tends to be focused by educationalists. ESD1 focus of environmentalists, and we need those two together. So that's my number 2 to start the talk. And now we're nearly over halfway through, so I better move on quickly to number 12. Number 12, these are 12 competencies that are part of what we call around a sense of purpose. Here they are. They are arranged in a grid. I'll explain quickly where they all came from. Each one though, behind that grid, systems, futures, participation, there are 3 learning outcomes that help to build up to that competence. There are more ideas, activities and underpinning components that help build up to that competence. And these are all available on the website for this thing. It's part of a project which was funded by the European Union. We've been working for 6 years on this. We went through lots of different frameworks, including UNESI, a framework I worked on. But that framework had 39 competencies. It divided them up into different components of learning, which isn't a competence. And we distilled the 39 in order to achieve these 12. And we tested them and we reworked them. We worked around the different countries in Europe through over 500 educators, head teachers, principals, and students to come up with what's on this website. The website address is there, and we can put it in the chat and make it available later. It's just one of those big awards I was talking about for being an effective way of reaching younger people and young learners. And so it is a whole series of activities. This is one of them, the sort of a webbing game that's teaching sort of the web of life. Everybody, all these are student teachers. They've all been assigned a creature or a plant, and the big guy in the middle, he's an oak tree, and everybody is a caterpillar, a slug, a mushroom, whatever, a fox, and they work out how they are all connected through one eating each other, one being eaten. And when we cut down the oak tree, all the strings are pulled and everybody is affected. We can look at this with primary school children with a simple diagram, or we can explore the food web of one fish. This is a cod in the North Sea, and you can see complexity that's involved. And we start to talk about complex systems, we talk about feedback, and you can get more and more complicated depending on the level of your students. So from early years up until PhD level and beyond, we can talk about complexity in different ways. Even in an English lesson, we talk about feedback. Well, what's that got to do with this? Let me give you an example. And so we can just throw in an example of, say, global warming leading to climate change, how the permafrost is melting. I've been to the Arctic myself in Alaska, working with Nupia Eskimos who keep their whale meat in ice cellars. cut into the permafrost. These are now flooding. More frightening still, class rates of methane. This is a slushy form of methane held under pressure under the ocean and now emerging and bursting into the air, what's called sea burps. And we are finding methane levels are very high in the Arctic Ocean. And it's likely to come from the seabed now as the oceans are warming and releasing this methane. So our release of fossil fuels warming the climate is leading to these feedback mechanisms which are warming the climate further. And we have very in-depth discussions about how climate change and global warming actually works. And it can be frightening. We talk about transdisciplinarity as one of those competencies. The fact that sustainable development issues are wicked problems. They are not easily solved. In fact, they are insoluble. But what we can do is understand them, contain them, manage them, mitigate them. And that takes expertise from different disciplines. And while different disciplines, these balls around the problem, can be looking at different facets, it takes another skill set to link them up, to communicate and to work with others, often beyond the scientific community as well. As I said, all this can be very daunting for students, and we must not lose sight of hope. Martin Luther King, for example, in his darkest days when he was up against the civil rights abuses in America and a kind of apartheid, he didn't say, "I have a nightmare." What he said, of course, was, "I have a dream." He was looking beyond the current malaise, the current crisis, and saying it can be better than this. And that vision helped to galvanize a movement which brought about the necessary change. So hope, it's a complex issue. And as we say here, it has multiple dimensions. Maria Euler is an academic who works in this field, who points out how blind hope is like a form of denial, just hoping for the best. It will get us nowhere. If you want people to act, then they need to see the evidence, work out where they can get involved, how they can get involved, often with others. And in that way, we build up a positive emotion rather than one of negativity. And we talk about values in the competence framework. And I'm very struck with the work of Amartya Sen, who points out that if we're going to measure development, we shouldn't be measuring it in terms of money. I heard the discussion about, of course, it takes resources. Japan's a rich country. It's what is a developed country is a country where people have the freedom to lead lives that they have reason to value, not lives that we would like to value for them. And that goes back to this framework issue. We need to understand that people have different value systems, and they can be adjusted if they are leading to unsustainable practices. So that's the framework. It's arranged in 3 columns, which reflects the old UNICE framework. So thinking holistically, thinking about the issues, envisioning change. Empathy is very important there for our students, especially as they are teachers, and creativity, being responsible, being a model, and then achieving transformation in your own work and in the wider system. As one student teacher in the Netherlands pointed out, when you start working on one of those competencies, you find yourself touching on all the other 11. So to illustrate this better, I've called this the RSB palette. So we put the competencies on a palette, and that illustrates more of an ESD2 approach, whereas the framework is ESD1, here's the right things to do. ESD2 says, well, these are options. Make up your own mind in your own context. You know who you are, who your students are, where they are, and what the situation is. So you mix and match and make your own colours. You can add other things to this palette. So it's not just a framework to be ticked off. It's an opportunity to be creative with those ideas as starting points. So at the core of this framework, there's a critical awareness of connections. the need to have a plan, develop a vision, and just do something, preferably with others. Even if it seems futile, if it seems you are not making a difference, you probably are. In a complex system, there is no option to not make a difference. Doing nothing is making a difference in one direction or another. So we do need to do something and recognize that we all have a role to play. So it's about agency, and we feel that's kind of a central core of where education should be going, less about telling people what to do. Better get on quickly. 17, you know these goals. I just like to think of them in this way. The fundamental thing is that these 4 goals about the biosphere and water and climate, these are fundamental. Without them, the other goals are irrelevant. But of course, we do start with the economy when we're thinking about planning, because the economy is in the center of our world, but you can't have an economy without a society. The society can't exist in a vacuum. So we need to think about the environment, of course. So this is a device, a heuristic, this nested systems model. Again, we would use with our students to say, of course, you're worried about the economy, about feeding your family, but never lose sight of how are you making your money? Is it building up or detracting from the environment that's supporting you? The 9 billion, we're going to pass this number in our population before 2050. And that's going to have huge implications for all of us. At the moment, we need 1.5 planets to look after ourselves. We will probably need 3 by 2050 when we are at 9 billion. However, this is not an anti-person thing. I'm not saying human beings are the problem, as many people will. But of course, we have displaced all the other animals, the wildlife that was supporting us. That empathy competence should be about empathy for other organisms and seeing ourselves as part of this web of life. We overshoot our use of the Earth's resources in August this year. But remember, the ants, there's about the same biomass of ants on the planet as there are the biomass of human beings. So it's not the number of us, it's what we do, how we live, that is the problem. So I'm not going to suggest that we rapidly reduce human numbers as a way out of this. That said, 9 billion is likely to be how we level out. That's probably the number we will reach and sustain in the long-term future. Lastly, this is Mauna Loa Observatory, which has been taking readings of CO2 in the atmosphere since 1958. And that is a familiar curve. The safe level was surpassed in 1987, 88, when we have gone beyond what is safe. We need to think about environmental limits, but as earlier speakers have said, there are social things we shouldn't consider, the foundation. And there's just gender equality there. There was some interesting things. Daphne was talking about domestic violence that came up in the Japanese example of people's heightened awareness of gender. I'm going to go on quickly to number 1. There's only one of these. And so really it's back to us to think about what we will do, what will our role be in helping all of us achieve a more sustainable way of life. For those of us in education, it's a matter of how do we feed those sustainable development goals into everything we teach, and bear in mind the preeminence, the importance of the environment, but never losing sight of the humanity that will actually be our salvation. So thank you for that. So a quick rapid through some numbers, and happy to take any questions.